We've all seen, have we not, these horrific videos on YouTube of people being evicted from their homes. The bailiffs are coming in heavy-handed. They come in and they start smashing the door in. The police are standing there, either not doing anything or they're actually actively helping to get people out. And now it's very difficult to know on a case-by-case basis, unless you've actually got the paperwork in front of you, whether there is a genuine case or whether these documents are fraudulent and the police shouldn't be there or the bailiffs shouldn't be there. And what is the procedure with the police? How should the police deal with this sort of situation? And I think these days, we cannot rely on these authoritative figures doing what they ought to be doing, and we need to be questioning them, because we know that, like, the police is a corporation now. The council is a corporation. It's got a number registered on Dun and Bradstreet. The government is a business. I mean, all these things that we thought were bodies which we have the power over. Well, we do as natural men and women, of course, as real living, breathing men and women, because these are just corporations. But we have to rethink what these people are and how they are represented. So I was passed a little bit of information which I found very interesting. I thought I would share some of it. It's quite a long document. I don't want to go through the whole lot. And what I'll do is I'll leave a link, and if you're interested, you can download this link and you can look at it and peruse it at your own time. Now, please notice that my links are not clickable. So if you go on there and you click them and nothing happens. I had a link the other day in which a document I shared, and it doesn't work. Doesn't work that way at the moment on YouTube for me. As you know, I've been banned many times. I've been demonetized, and now the links aren't working. The YouTube really don't want to be helpful, but at least I'm still here, so that's okay. So what you have to do is you copy with your mouse, highlight it, copy it, paste it in a browser, and then press go, and then it will work. And I'm using tiny URL links if the long links don't go, because YouTube sort of cut them down. So without further ado, let's have a look at what this is. And this is a document called Guidance for Police Officers and Their Personal Liability When Attending Evictions and Home Captures. Now, I think this is very useful for all sorts of interactions with the police. And we may follow up this with how we deal with the police, such as asking for their warrant card, such as asking for which police station they're working out, which one they're working out today, and all these sort of things. And I think there's probably a good procedure that we should be, again, knowing about ourselves. But let's just go in. This is for the police officers. So this is really what the police themselves ought to understand. And it would be a shame, would it not, if we have to educate the police because they don't know their own procedures. So it's interesting to see what that is. Incidentally, you may have heard of the PACE book, which is the book that the police, which is a little bit more detailed than this, which is the rules that they have to abide by. This is just guidance, but the PACE book is rules. And I'm going to get a copy of that, because I think there's a number of those things that would be worth examining, and we can see if that's happening, and you can tell me if these things are not being adhered to, because if you know what section that is not correct and these policemen are using it, then you know how to push back against it. Because as soon as you challenge the authority and say, hang on a second, that section's not quite right, that doesn't affect me, because they're going to assume you don't know. Well, if you go to them and say, hang on, I do know what I'm talking about, that puts them on the back foot. It reduces their power, which I think in this day and age, and we're seeing so much abuse and so much fraud and corruption, we definitely just need to... It's like going back to school again, isn't it? It's like going back to school. So let's just have a look at some of this guidance and see where it takes us. So, guidance for police officers and in their personal liability when attending evictions and home captures. Civilians have lawful rights to defend their property. Introduction. So as I say, I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just think it would be worth going through some of it. Introduction. It is crucial police officers know civilians' rights and understand how lawfully to protect civilians' lives and human rights and property from attack. Just going to pause there. Just going to pause for a second. The word civilian is a dodgy old thing because it comes from civil. It goes right back to the Roman times. And this puts us into different jurisdictions. If you are a living man and you're not the legal entity, and this is where it gets very confusing, that we switch from these two jurisdictions. If you're the living man, you're not in the world of acts and statutes and corporations. They have to have a contract to deal with you. So you're not really a citizen in the way that they're writing there. You're not a Mr. and Mrs. They are, as I understand it, military titles. So if you're a living man, you're just a man or a woman. These things don't apply to you. However, there are times when it's useful to be able to, just in order to defuse a situation or push back against the situation and use their rules against them, that you can step into their jurisdiction. And it's you've got to know when you can do that and when you can't, and how you step back out of it again, I grant you, and that's sort of complex, but let's just go on. So just bear in mind, this is kind of those people who are considering themselves as residents or civilians. You're in their jurisdiction, but even though you're in their jurisdiction, you might be able to push back using their rules. So having made that hopefully a bit clearer, let's continue. Police officers must gain a foundation of knowledge and experience in the execution of duty according to the rule of law. Ignorance is no defence, which is what they often throw at us, is it not? Officers must not willfully refuse or neglect to discharge any lawful duty. To do so may constitute misconduct in public office, to varying offences and breaches including misfeasance and nonfeasance and malfeasance, which can include lifetime imprisonment. Police need to question why alleged unlawful evictions are happening. Many are due to fraud, deceit by banks' own staff, where victims have been predatory attacked by bank staff, lawyers, bank lawyers, as allowed to happen under the state failure of Home Office, Treasury, politicians and regulators. Now, let's just pause there for a second. A lot of these mortgages are fraudulent to begin with. In fact, probably all of them are, because the money has been created illegally or unlawfully by the signature of the man taking the mortgage by the Bills of Exchange Act, and has created the money. Now, we've spoken about that in the past. So some of these mortgages, but the police and even the courts are unlikely to recognise that. But let's just move on a little bit more. Police officers need to stay calm and assess the threat to all parties, especially homeowners, vulnerable persons, and changes that may occur during tension at a civil eviction, not election, attempts where a location may require ongoing assessment in respect of health and safety. Police officers must uphold their oath, including ECHRs, which is enforcement. I think this is is this enforcement debt collectors? I can't remember what ECHR is. It'll come down we'll see it in the text. Every constable is an independent legal entity, just as the legal person is. So if we switch into that role, that's what we are. The public's guarantee of impartiality without fear and favour. Officers of the Crown must operate independent of undue influence, interference, with a personal responsibility. Each police officer has personal liability. That's something that is worth us remembering, that we can then say to these police officers, hold on a second, you personally can be held liable for anything that happens here if things go wrong. And if they're acting fraudulently, or they're encouraging bailiffs to break into a house using not real magistrates or courts writs or documents, one say generated by the council for council tax and things like that, which is often not actually genuine. So policemen can clearly be held personally liable and accountable for their actions. Officers, constables, we're up here now, swearing allegiance as below, and this apparently is what they should be swearing. I do solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that I will well and truly serve the King in the office of constable with fairness, integrity, diligence, and impartiality, upholding fundamental human rights and according equal respect to all people, and that I will, to the best of my power, cause the peace to be kept and preserved and prevent all offences against people and property. Prevent all offences against people and property. And that while I continue to hold the said office, I will, to the best of my skill and knowledge, discharge all the duties thereof faithfully according to the law. And it says law, not the legalese or the legislation. Impartiality. When senior officers carry out risk assessment, officers must be impartial, non-biased, i.e. you're not attending just for the bailiffs. This is, yes, these are the enforcement officers. Is it High Court Enforcement Officer? I think that stands for. Police officers are personally accountable for their actions. Any forced actions of bailiffs could be common assault. In such instances, police should stay any assault by bailiffs and arrest bailiffs of High Court enforcement officers for their actions. And this is quite interesting. The old Robert Peel, who set up the police all those years ago, the Peel Principles. The first principles of policing were introduced by Sir Robert Peel. His most memorable principle was, the police are the public and the public are the police. Sir Robert Peel emphasised that police officers should focus on preventing crime and maintaining order rather than taking on judicial roles. Officers' primary mission is to serve the community. Its primary mission to serve, I can't highlight that, why is that? There we go. Highlight the community and secure public approval through impartial service to the law. By adhering to this principle, law enforcement agencies can build trust and cooperation with the public. Yeah, I would like to see law enforcement agencies building trust with us. The test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action dealing with it. So that's it. As I say, it's a long old document and I don't want to spend forever on it. But there's very many things in this document that is definitely worth having a look at. So here we go. Look, enforcement officer is now the official name of bailiffs since revised regulations of 2014, although the term bailiff is still more commonly used. Instructing a bailiff is one method of civil debt enforcement. Different types of bailiffs are used to collect different types of debt on behalf of creditors, including local authorities, government page 2, blah, 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 departments, and private individuals seeking to enforce a court judgment. Some bailiffs are officers of the court, others are self-employed, some are employees of a private debt company. The rules governing the regulation of bailiffs were completely overhauled in 2014. Now, it's interesting because you can go and check if a bailiff turns up. I had a bailiff here who called himself Mr. Adams. And they don't want to give you their first name, or they just give you their first name, don't give you their last name. But there is a place you can go and look them up at, I forget where it is off the top of my head, and I did it. And I found the first name of the bailiff, because I knew the company, of the bailiff who turned up. So now I have his whole name, so because I can make him personally liable. I could tell whether also he was self-employed or employed by the agency. And as we've also recently found out, if a bailiff turns up at your door and he's self-employed and he admits that he's self-employed, if he's got on his phone your details, well, that's a breach of what's it called? The Data Protection Act. and he should not have that details on his phone. And you can call him up on that, and you can say, well, I'm holding you personally liable. I should take you to court for that, because you should not have that personal information on your phone. You should not have been sent that. Different if you are working for the company and it's the company, but then how did that company get the information? So many interesting bits and pieces in this to have a look at. And it talks about the bailiffs, their rights and their not rights. For example, bailiffs are not allowed to come into the house, and an alleged debtor does not have to let the bailiff into the home at one of these evictions when they knock on the door. Bailiffs are not allowed to push past an individual to gain entry or jam their foot in the door. Bailiffs can legally visit a debtor's home or business premises any day of the week, but enforcement can only happen between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. unless the court specifies otherwise. And there are other details on all of this. From what my understanding is, if it's a High Court official registered bailiff, they have to say the name of the company, if not the officer who is going to serve the writ, so that they can have access to the house. They can't come along with all these false documents. And this is what the police, and in this document it does say, the police must ensure that all documentation is genuine. So if your bailiff is at the door with a laptop or a tablet or their phone with a document on it that it could easily be manipulated in Photoshop with or without some form of signature, unless you've actually got the paper on the bonded court paper with a wet ink signature and the name of the magistrate, judge or whomever on there, and the name of the agency, the bailiff agency is there, it's not a legitimate document. And the police must look at the stuff. If it's on their phone and things like it might be convenient for them to carry around, but they must carry it. We had a situation with the lovely Julia, and they were saying, but what if it gets lost? We don't want to carry. I mean, what if it gets lost? I mean, what did they do before computers and things? They carried bits of paper around. They didn't have them on their phone. And then it's like, well, is that real? Is that, photos can be manipulated. It's all a load of old rubbish. Anyway, I'll leave that document, and you can have a look at it if you so wish. I think with all the stuff, we've just got to be as more informed than the police, because it seems that they and the bailiffs will put one over us. I mean, I'm saying that's what it seems, what it feels like, unless we are able to call it out. Thanks for watching.